All right, welcome to How to Affect Behavior and Sway Opinions. This is going to be an excellent course for anybody who uses communication to affect people's behavior. That means if you are in sales and you need to affect and sway people's opinions to buy something, if you are a manager or leader in some capacity, you need to affect your employees to do something. If you are a public speaker, or if you are just in any kind of relationship, personal or business, where you want people to agree with you or understand where you're coming from, and so forth, doing, affecting people's behavior, this course is for you. Now, what we're going to learn in this lesson are three things. We're going to learn the three barriers that affect behavior and opinions. We will then learn how to avoid toxic language that, surprisingly, most people end up using and don't realize it. And third, we're going to learn the actual communication that inspires, that cuts through the barriers of affecting people's behavior and opinions. Let's get right into it. This, what you see on your screen, sums up the barriers of communication or the barriers that affect behavior and understanding. If we can get straight to the heart of an individual, we can gain their connection, trust. They allow us to have influence. And then we don't have to try very hard in order to affect that person's behavior, for them to believe us, to understand us, or to maybe even change their opinions on things. Before we go any further, we have to make one notable difference. There is a difference between inspiration and motivation. This is not a motivational course. This is a course that inspires people to change their behavior or opinions. And inspiration comes from within. That's why the word in is in inspiration. A synonym for that would be intrinsic. Motivation is from external forces. So, for example, maybe you are not the type that is inspired to run in a workout because you don't like running. It's not what inspires you. However, you may be compelled to run when you see a dog that looks ferocious coming straight for you. One is a very temporary feeling that goes away, and the other one is innate in who you are, and it takes less effort to get you to do who you are. So let's get into the intrinsic part of people, because if we can connect to the intrinsic part of people, we can inspire them. And with that, we can connect with them, they trust us, and we have an influence with that person. And we call this the intrinsic part, the core of people, who they are in their heart, because this is where their hopes and dreams are, deep securities, deepest regrets, and their true beliefs, what they truly believe. I emphasize true beliefs and phrase it this way on purpose because true beliefs are what people do not question. Opinions are open to change, but what somebody truly believes usually stays that way for that individual. Now, there are other barriers that affect this person's true beliefs, that affects our ability to connect with them and inspire them so we can change their behavior and opinions. And the first barrier is emotional, first of two barriers. That emotional barrier, now it's not to say that the core of who they are is not emotional, but this is the emotional part that is almost like the test. If we can get past this barrier, then we are allowed by them to connect and trust them, and they will allow us to have an influence. In this emotional barriers, people will share their goals, maybe some of their regrets in life and joys, maybe those embarrassing stories and moments they've had in life, but now are funny enough to share, or maybe some of their opinions they're willing to share with you. And if we handle this part right, we can get to that place of connection, trust, and influence that affects their behavior. And making them feel acknowledged, understood, and validated is the key to that. And we may have heard this explained as being feeling seen and heard. The other barrier, this is the logic barrier. This is the one that's most exposed to everyday elements at work or through traffic or wherever somebody might be. This is where curiosity usually peeks through. And anything logical and that makes sense happens here in the logic side of this person's being. When we understand the logical, emotional, and intrinsic parts of people, we then can start to understand how we can communicate in a way to build that connection, trust, and influence. We want to communicate in a way that reaches people's hearts. However, while some communication, as you see on the left, does exactly that, most people communicate like what you see on the right. And they might get a little penetration into the emotional side of a person, but then wonder why there's not a connection or trust. So let's talk about what communication is first of all, and then we can talk about how people end up making some mistakes. Communication is the process of expressing or exchanging information, and we do this in a variety of ways. If we do this correctly, we go again straight to the heart of somebody. And if we do this wrong, it's toxic. So how do we avoid toxic language that most people use?